I would now like to introduce today's presenters. David Ricard, partner, leads Everest Group's global customer experience management services and sourcing and vendor management for clients globally. Chendak Biswas is a practice director on the business process services team. He assists clients on topics related to customer experience management, including customer experience strategy, service delivery models, market opportunities, and more. And with that, I would like to turn things over to David.
Thank you very much, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to everybody, wherever you are in the world. I'm currently in Florida, actually. I'm normally in the UK, so I'm a bit discombobulated with the time zone, so apologies. And I'm also in a hotel room, so if you see me jump up quickly, it's because the cleaners come in to clean the room. So just giving you a bit of context, just in case we have any issues, but hopefully we'll be fine today. So we wanted to do this session. So Chandak and I have been talking about what we should be doing when we do this webinar today. And we looked back and we actually realized that for the last 6 months, the CXM industry has gone completely crazy. I've been in the industry about 20 plus years. I was a senior director at Microsoft for many years on the buyer side. I've also been a consultant and now I'm an analyst. And I've been watching this market for 20 plus years, and it feels like it's always been bubbling over or bubbling and ticking over. In the last 6 months, it feels like the pace has really picked up and the heat has really got in the market. So we thought it was a good time to start to think about, okay, what are we seeing in the industry? What have we seen in the last 6 months? And then what can we expect to see maybe moving forward? Because you can't have a session like this, and don't worry, we will touch on generative AI, and it feels like it's the law that you have to talk about generative AI in any session that we do. But what we wanted to do is we'll just have a quick look in terms of the industry and the impact of the recession. We'll talk about some cost pressures that we're seeing in the industry. We'll touch on the mergers and acquisitions that we're seeing that are really sort of shaping the market and what that could what the impact could happen in the future. Then we will look at generative AI and how we're seeing that impact the CXM industry, and we do expect that to be a major factor moving forward. And then we'll close with a future outlook just to see what we think could be happening. And it's really hard to predict this market, as you would expect, but we'll give some sense in terms of where we feel the market going. So hopefully we're going to cover all of the hot topics, but as we said at the beginning, if you've got questions, please use the Q&A tab and we'll try and answer them. We also did get some questions in advance of this session, and if we don't answer them live today, we will follow up afterwards and come back to you as well. So having said that, let's move on, and we'll kick off with thinking about some of the cost pressures, and I'll hand it over to Chandak.
Thank you so much, David, for giving that context. I think it's very important to discuss what's going to happen, as well as the themes which are driving the market right now. But before we go into those sections, let's start with the beginning. How is the market doing? What are we seeing and what we have seen till now with the market? So if you see in this chart, majority of the CXM market, we estimate it to be close to $350 billion. Is dominated or comprises by the in-house contact centers, while the outsourcing has been growing, and last year we have seen it growing at a rate of 6 to 8%. But still 70% of the market still remains with in-house contact centers. However, having said that, after the pandemic, we have seen the opening of borders, normalization of businesses as well as supply chains, easing of travel restrictions, and as well as boost of demand across different sectors has in turn increased the outsourcing being done by many enterprises, as well as now enterprises are realizing that the importance of having that digital suite of digital technologies and omni-channel customer experience, which is quite important to deliver, and a lot of them might not have that present in-house. So that's why many in-house centers are right now strategically partnering with service providers to have that custom set of solutions in place to tackle anything, if anything at all, like COVID comes up in the future, or as well as in their continuous business services. So this was about the overall market, what we have seen, and then let's deep dive onto the service providers. And here we have listed down the quarter-on-quarter growth the publicly listed service providers that exist in the market. So if we see in Q1 or Q2 of 2020, most of the service providers were initially struggling to move their workforce from centers to home. They were battling with a number of challenges related to the pandemic and had to take many different actions very quickly. But the industry coped up with the initial barriers and challenges created by COVID quite well. And if you see from the third and fourth quarter of 2020, the industry started maturing. And the growth numbers that we witnessed in publicly listed providers were getting improved quarter on quarter after the first half of 2020. And this was due to multiple reasons. The demand for digital solutions. It's no secret, like I said in the previous slide, that businesses and enterprises right now they realize the importance of digital solution, and more so when the pandemic hit the market, and they understood that the usual traditional model no longer work. And that's why a lot of service providers started seeing that demand coming from many enterprises. While number of some sectors were hit, there are other sectors which really did well, and specifically those sectors which had to move a lot of their business from offline to online business models, such as retail. As well as there were a lot of demand due to the government contracts and one-off COVID-related work coming to providers, which also boosted their growth. I think right now when we see in 2023, and here we have the data till the first quarter of 2023, because a lot of providers have not yet published or are going to publish very soon their data for the next quarter. But the current growth rates are slightly down due to the attenuation of some of the COVID-induced volumes. The contracts which have been signed in the past couple of years, they are coming to an end, as well as because this is a quarter-on-quarter calculation. A lot of them had very strong quarter in the previous years, which has relatively brought down the percentage. It's all the game of maths. And but what we believe is over the next couple of years, or maybe in this year itself, the impacts will recede. The growth rates will get normalized, and this is what we are also seeing in the growth outlook for most of the providers, which you can see in the bottom half of the slide. And providers are looking at most of the providers are looking at more than 5% growth, and it's more so the bigger providers. So the growth currently looks positive for the outsourcing market to grow in this year, and whatever time is left in 2023, as well as the coming years. If I talk about the margins that these providers have enjoyed over the last few years, most of them have been in the range of 10 to 20%. And this is quite constant and throughout the market, in which providers have been able to maintain that level of margins throughout. And I think their focus and investments in their people, the skilled workforce that they are maintaining, which is quite important nowadays, to not just answer customer queries, but also handle all the tools and technologies that comes along in the contact center. The technology investments that providers are making, we see a lot of investments being done, developing platforms, developing analytics and insight solutions, and more so right now around generative AI. So these kind of investments are enabling most of the providers to enjoy higher margins and maybe offer a more robust set of value-added solutions to their existing client base and increasing the margins. And by value-added solution, I mean maybe customer journey mapping, CX channel strategy, a bit of marketing support as well. And a lot of them are also synergizing and leveraging their CXM experience to expand into other service lines like trust and safety, marketing, sales services. And finally, a lot of service providers are focusing on CX consulting services as well, and they are using such type of one-off consulting engagements to learn and understand the buyer's business more closely, and then leveraging those kind of engagements to move to a long-term CX contracts. So I think a lot of these pillars are enabling CXM service providers to maintain that margins over the years. and we expect to see that in the similar lines in the coming year as well. So having said about the market as well as how different providers are doing, what is the outlook? There are multiple themes that are shaping up the market right now. And it's around the cost pressure that both service providers and buyers are facing, the M&As that are happening in the market, as well as the generative AI coming into the foray. And we will talk about each and every theme in the coming section. But David, what do you think about the first one? What's the pressure looks like? Why is it happening, and what are your views about it?
Yeah, thanks, Chanda. And yeah, I mean, I think it's always an interesting dynamic that we face when we talk about CX, especially when we start talking about cost pressures, because there is always an expectation that we're going to continue to drive up the customer experience, but whilst also trying to drive down the cost pressure. And I think that's why there's always that tension between how do we improve the customer experience, reduce the cost, and is that through automation, elimination efforts? That's why there is so much focus on generative AI and other technologies that can try and drive down the amount of humans you need in the loop to be able to sort of control some of that cost. But businesses are really struggling in terms of having to think about how they reduce their cost. And so what we've seen is actually that there are continuing rising cost locations. And so in this chart, we just look at where we've seen the price, and this is all baseline back to 100. So it's not an absolute number, but it's baseline back to 100. But what we've seen is that since H2 of 2020, the prices, whether you're onshore, nearshore, or offshore, have continued to rise because there's been a number of factors. So shortage of talent was one of the issues. There's rising prices in countries where actually inflation, I'm in the UK, inflation's out of control in the UK right now, and let's not get onto politics, but we've seen that rising inflation is going to drive up wages, which is going to drive up the cost. And so therefore, service providers are going to have to increase their rates and their costs to try to attract the talent, retain the talent, and meet them. But obviously buyers are looking to always drive down the cost because they're looking to run support as cheaply as they possibly can whilst giving the best customer experience. And so there is always a real tension when we start thinking about this, and that really puts the buyer into a difficult position. So you've got service providers charging more because of their rising costs, but then an organizational priority to reduce cost of outsourcing their customer experience. And so that's why we're seeing this real focus right now, A, on the technology, which we'll talk about, but B, where we're seeing a lot of the success is where buyers and providers are able to work in partnership to identify the opportunities to actually reduce their costs. So we've heard examples recently of where the best relationships are because the provider has identified that there's an issue with the buyer's business, and they've come with proactive ideas around how to reduce the cost. Actually, it's also about service providers not trying to protect the revenues that they're generating. And I've had a few conversations recently where we've talked to buyers who have said, I'd much rather give a provider a bigger share of a smaller pie. So they will keep generating revenue, but actually we need to shrink the size of the pie. But if the right provider, the one who's helping me to shrink the size of the pie, will get a bigger share of it. So that's actually sort of what we're seeing is a lot of focus around how do you partner to really be able to drive those relationships and manage the costs that you've got. So there's levers that you can use. And so there are always those short-term levers. So challenging less valuable activities. So what are the value activities that actually add less value to the customer, your end customer, the consumer, and can you reduce those? Are you asking for too stringent business requirements? And so we always get into this stage. We do a lot of work with buyers, as I said, where we start thinking about what are the business requirements and are they driving your price up? So it can even be as simple things like what's your average speed to answer, or what are you asking for that, or what's your training requirements, or what's your education requirements. So they're all having impact on the overall cost. So can you look at what levers you can pull to actually try and control the costs? Exploring alternative locations, that's one that's been around for years. I mean, labor arbitrage has been a way of driving cost out for a long time. There aren't many cheaper locations than we're in today when you think about India, the Philippines, etc. But if you're already in a higher cost location, is there an opportunity to do it? And then rebalancing your business amongst providers can sometimes give you those levers. But at the end of the day, let's be practical about it. Contact center business is largely about the people. You have to pay people the appropriate wage, and therefore actually just moving it around is not necessarily going to give you benefits. But sometimes you can get benefits because you can balance your portfolio and get a bit better book of business discounts, and they can be areas where you can also drive down the cost. And then you start thinking about longer term levers, then it is how do you think about adoption of non-voice channels and translation solutions, again because people are the biggest cost within a CXM operation, leveraging technology to reduce your volumes through AI and automation, and then relook at your SLAs to adjust your staffing levels without impacting the quality. Again, all these things have to be looked at very carefully, and what are you trying to achieve from a business objective? But these are just some of the levers that we're seeing that organizations are looking at to try and control the costs. If we move on to, we touched on service providers earlier and then what we're seeing in the market. So we've seen a lot of mergers and acquisitions. So Chandak, maybe just give us a quick view, bring everyone up to speed. I'm sure everyone's aware. If they're on this webinar, they're probably very aware of what's happening, but maybe just give us a quick clear view of what's happening in the market.
Yes, absolutely. I think the M&A trend is nothing new for the CXM industry overall. We have been witnessing a lot of acquisitions, mergers happening over the years, in which a lot of bigger providers are buying smaller ones to increase their either their expansion across different geographies, or expanding into new services industries, maybe a specialized industry or a specialized set of services, as well as increasing their foothold in the technologies, acquiring smaller technology vendors who are very good at or in a niche set of technology which a buyer can leverage in their CXM services. So we have been witnessing it, but the biggest ones have happened in the first half of 2020, where Concentrix announced the acquisition of Webhelp, which was followed by Teleperformance announcing the acquisition of Majorel in the first half of 2023. So we'll deep dive on each of the acquisition, what we see, what are our observations regarding these acquisitions. So the first one, Concentrix Webhelp, I think this is the first time that we will be witnessing providers reaching 10 billion size in the CXM industry, and this acquisition has a lot of synergies in place. So, for example, the presence of Webhelp in Europe and the stronghold of Concentrix in North America is going to create a lot of synergies in between, especially Webhelp's, especially Concentrix is present in North America and Webhelp's present in Latin America, Europe, as well as Africa. And I think both of them have complementary presence in the APAC region as well. So that is going to expand their operational presence. In terms of delivery, I think the entire acquisition is adding 25 new countries to Concentrix's portfolio, including a lot of European countries as well, Denmark, Greece, Finland, Norway, among others. I think this will just strengthen their existing footprint. I think Concentrix right now is present in around 20-25 countries. So this will increase their delivery presence as well. From an operational standpoint, I think it will create a lot of operational synergies in terms of the existing technology capabilities, such as Concentrix Catalyst platforms, which will have complementary synergies with Webhelp's focus on their consulting arms go beyond partners, as well as their focus on startups and fast-growing businesses through the Webhelp Nest. So I think the technology prowess of Concentrix coupled with the consulting focus approach of Webhelp will create a lot of synergies in between the combined entity. And the final one is the expansion into other service lines. So Concentrix has the potential to expand into trust and safety service line as well, due to Webhelp's presence as well as experience of serving trust and safety customers since last many years, as well as some bit of legal services in terms of legal claims management, KYCs, that Webhelp has a very strong hold in. So overall, the expected synergies out of this acquisition is expected to reach around $75 million in the first year itself, and will be interesting to see how the longer run happens and how this combined entity functions in the longer run for the clients. The next one is the acquisition of Majorel by Teleperformance, and this is an entity which is expected to breach the $10 billion mark, and the expected size of the combined entity is going to be around $12.8 billion. And I think Teleperformance, being one of those one of the biggest providers in the CXM industry, will the addition of Majorel to their own portfolio will augment each other's existing presence. So, for example, although Teleperformance was present across the world, but Majorel has a very strong presence in Europe, and particularly in Africa, which is one of those fast-growing market in terms of CXM delivery, as well as source CXM services, in which clients are expecting a lot of onshore delivery from Africa to Africa. And I think this will also broaden the industry penetration, because both these providers were present in almost all of the industries. And this will just increase their presence in most of them. And at the same time, Majorel has a lot of focus on FGT clients as well as banking financial clients. They have a lot of industry-specific solution, which will increase Teleperformance strengths as well. The language coverage is also expected to get boosted, as well as the multilingual hubs that both of these providers have across Europe. And I think finally, similar to what Webhelp has, Majorel also offers its Majab business, through which it has a consulting focus as well, called Majorel X. So these are the things which will add to the Teleperformance suite of services, as well as the Teleperformance DIPS business. And finally, the remote working solution that Teleperformance has, Cloud Campus. So the addition of Majorel will just bolster the Teleperformance's existing set of solutions as well as services. So covering these two acquisitions, I think right now, after these two news came out in the market, the CXM provider landscape has changed significantly. So earlier we had seen provide $2 billion plus providers, a number of them existing in the market, but this is the first time in which we are seeing providers reaching or breaching the $10 billion mark, and Concentrix and Teleperformance are going to be the first ones, and we are calling them CXM Titans, because these are the providers which are expected to have a global reach across most of the countries, most of the regions, as well as have a global presence across industries. And the combined entity, the combined set of these providers are expected to take almost 15% of the market share. But having said that, it's a $100 billion plus market, and multiple value propositions exist, multiple type of providers exist. The other type of providers that we are seeing, which you can see in this slide, large CCO providers who are competing in the scale-based play, have $2 billion or more business in the CXM side, and have good presence across one or number of regions. The other ones, we see IT BPO providers who have a stronghold in the IT services business, and they are increasingly expanding their portfolio of services on the CX side, and offering their IT clients the CX support as well, so that they have control over both technology as well as people.
And Chandak, I think it's interesting. I think we should move on a little bit, but for me, I think that my advice to buyers, so I know we've probably got a lot of service providers on this webinar, but hopefully we've got some buyers as well. My advice to buyers always is, I mean, the market's really diverse. There's a lot of different providers out there. And actually, I don't think there's one right provider for anybody. I think it's about really understanding your business requirements, what you're looking for. Or we often say there's limited differentiation in the market. All the providers are able to offer digital transformation. They all have the people skills, etc. But actually, there is differentiation when you look at it against your own business requirements. So my advice would be, really look at your business requirements, understand what you're looking for, and then through the process of identifying the right provider, there are lots of providers out there who are bringing great skills and services, and so just work through the process would be my advice, and match your business requirements against those capabilities. But why don't we move on to get on to the next topic? I think it'll be good plan.
Sure. So just the last one on the CXM landscape. although it's harder for providers to win new clients, but it's even harder and important to retain the existing clients because of the huge competition in the market. So there are a few factors which are differentiating one provider with the other, and the most important one is how an account is being managed by a service provider, because a robust account management is quite crucial for receiving any constructive feedback and ensuring that the delivery is in line with what is committed by the sales team. And in those lines, a strong delivery leadership is equally important, so that the contractual commitments are met. The delivery leadership understands the requirement of the buyer and acts accordingly, as well as in case of emergency requirements, they can act swiftly to support buyers. The other two are technology. Everyone is quite aware that technology investments are increasing a lot, and it's important for service providers not just have this set of technologies, but also proactively identify gaps and support buyers proactively in any technology journey that buyers are going to undertake. And finally, it's about the culture. The contact center world is very competitive, as well as working in contact centers is often very challenging. That's why it's important to have that cultural alignment, so that service providers can understand what a buyer needs, be a strategic partners, and have a transparency in their relationship. So all in all, these are the 4 pillars through which we see service providers differentiating themselves from the buyers.
Just a very quick comment. We've had a few people commenting on the chat or the Q&A around where are other particular providers on that previous chart. That wasn't supposed to be an exhaustive list of every provider. We have just picked a selection of providers. So if you're not seeing the provider you're looking for, if you're from that provider or you work with that provider, that's not meant as any slight on those providers, but we couldn't put every provider that we work with. We talk to over 100 service providers every year. We couldn't put everybody on the list, just to make that clear.
Yep.
Right, let's move on, Chandak, and let's make sure we get through all of the this topic, because I think this is one that a lot of people are interested in. So let's make sure we can do a good job on this one.
This is the hottest topic right now in the CXM industry, and not just CXM. Everyone is talking about ChatGPT and generative AI. Although such kind of technologies existed before 2023, 2022, but ChatGPT has taken the world by storm. It just took it 5 days to breach the 1 million users, which not a lot of platforms that we use regularly could have done in their times. Right now, every day, almost 30 million users are visiting ChatGPT, leveraging its expertise and making their lives easier. So we did a quick analysis around where does CXM industry stands and how different industries across different service lines across BPO fare when we compare their potential, as well as how easy it will be to adopt generative AI in them. So CXM stands at the top, you can see. And there are multiple factors for it. And I'll mention some of those. One is data abundance. I think CXM industry deals with a lot of data. Vast amount of customer data exists with providers, and if handled or train the model in a correct way, has a lot of potential to personalize and customize the offerings that providers are or a brand is offering to their customers. There exists a lot of potential around content creation and content management, because customers need that personalized approach. Customers want to quickly get an answer from their agents through maybe voice or non-voice channels, in which generative AI can be very handy for contact centers. And finally, CXM industry leverages a lot of chatbots and virtual assistants, and these kind of tools play a significant role in enhancing customer experience. And the ability of generative AI based solution to naturally understand the customer intent, generate answers which are more humanistic in nature, enables these kind of tools and technology to have a component of generative AI and increase their reach, use cases, as well as how they're interacting with customers. So there are multiple areas through which CXM industry can leverage generative AI, and thus have the huge potential in the future years. Although the use cases are quite limited right now, but we see multiple areas in which applications can be potentially possible. And we see there are three three broader buckets. One, definitely with customer-facing tools and technologies, like I said, around chatbots, conversational AI solutions. We will discuss. We have a slide on the conversational AI part coming up. But generative AI has the potential to make such solutions more intelligent. Self-service portals more capable of answering customer queries, which were quite limited in the previous years. This is about customer side. On the agent side, we see a lot of potential where generative AI can be leveraged for live agent assistance on calls, as well as post-call work, supporting agents in maybe emails, chat, social media, leveraging customer data feedback from various channels, analyze it, and support the brand in taking the correct business decision. And finally, one thing in which CXM industry has a lot of potential, which is not yet done a lot, is around product development. And listening to customer is ever more important right now. And generative AI has the potential to connect contact centers with product development teams and feed them with the adequate customer data and knowledge and insights. So talking about a bit about conversational AI solutions, right now there has been a lot of growth as in terms of complexity and sophistication of conversational AI, as well as coming up of new type of vendors in the CXM space. But we see LLMs and generative AI and solutions such as ChatGPT has the potential to further bolster the conversational AI space. And we think it will create a cyclical loop in terms of continuously training the conversational AI solution, reducing the number of intents that it needs to be, or maybe utterances in each intent in which the solution needs to be trained in, having more accuracy in that continuous learning and training cycle of the conversational AI solutions, and in turn enabling the conversational AI to generate more human-like conversations, switching context in between a chat, understanding what a customer wants to get answers, and then quickly understanding the correct intent with higher accuracy, and answering based on whatever the customer is asking. So LLMs, generative AI has quite a lot of potential in enhancing the conversational AI space and current conversational AI solutions. And we have been seeing some of that as well. And these are very initial use cases in the market, in which some of the enterprises have started deploying generative AI in their existing solutions. Most of them are currently doing for the internal agent base or internal employee base, in which they are powering their internal chatbots with GPT-4 technologies, for example, so that these chatbots can provide a summarized view to their internal customers, internal employees, maybe internal teacher base, like for example for Khan Academy that you can see in this slide. And one unique use case that we have also seen from the government of Iceland, which is the last example in this slide, in which it's preserving the Icelandic language, generating more and more content in this Icelandic language, and also improve its usage in the current population. So right now the investments are happening in the chatbots, in the conversational AI solutions, which are more internal facing, and the approach of most of the enterprises and providers are about testing the waters, seeing the success, and maybe replicating it full-fledgedly in the customer-facing scenarios.
And Chandak, there's been a question that I'd like to maybe take as well, which was around is generative AI and ChatGPT really just hype? Because I think the person who raised the question has been around in the industry a while, like me, and talked about digital transformation 5 years ago, and a lot of initiatives didn't happen. I'll give my personal opinion. I mean, I think there is an element of hype because generative AI, ChatGPT hit the press, and actually nearly everyone, even like people at home who may not be in the industry, have heard about ChatGPT and are trying it and getting it to write letters in the theme of Snoop Dogg or whatever. So all of the silly examples that people have used for it. So I do think there's definitely an element of hype because it's hit the market. But the more research we've done onto this, I do think we're seeing a lot of examples of service providers using it as agent assistants and helping agents to be more efficient, effective, helping them answer questions better. I think that over time it will become then more customer facing as well. So I think there's an element of hype because it hit the press and hit mainstream press, which means that there's hype. But I definitely think this is one where, combined with the fact that people are looking to reduce their cost, and we know that our research has shown that over 70% of revenues generated by service providers is still on voice. That's going to have to change over time if we're going to balance that cost versus customer satisfaction tension. So I do think there's an element of hype, to answer the question in a very long-winded way, but I also think there is reality in here that is going to help drive the industry forward and actually help reduce that reliance on voice, and actually start to give that extra balance. But Chanda, I don't know if you agree with that or disagree with that, but I just wanted to address that question live because it was one that I'm sure people are thinking about.
Totally agree with your thoughts, David. And I think it's a very interesting question. And my perspective is a lot of technologies that we have seen in the past, at least with respect to the CXM, for example, maybe metaverse or applications of blockchain. Those are the technologies which required a lot of technological expertise, as well as a lot of change management in the existing set of processes, existing enterprise way of working. And those required most of the enterprises to identify a specific set of solutions, specific set of use cases, and invest on a very focused way on those use cases. But the beauty of generative AI right now is it's able to blend itself in the existing use cases, existing way of working, like you said, maybe supporting agents in the voice, summarizing call transcripts, in quality and quality assurance of contact centers, and so on and so forth. So the existing use cases can be made more efficient with relatively lesser change management required from an enterprise perspective. That is why although there is an hype, I do agree, but still this technology has much more potential to impact the market as compared to the other ones that we have seen in the yesteryears. And this creates quite a good segue to this slide, in which traditionally we have seen digital CXM growing and being the powerhouse of CXM or overall CXM growth. And in the last few years, we have seen it growing at more than 25% rate. Although the market is still dominated by the normal contact center services, agent-based, voice, non-voice based services, but right now around 15% of the market is covered by digital tools and technologies and solutions. And these are the revenues that providers are able to generate from their customer base or their client base. However, we do feel that with the advent of generative AI and the expected impact that it should have on the current set of conversational AI solutions, agent assist solutions, automation solutions, and in turn being able to drive down cost, will definitely lead to the boost of digital CXM in the overall market. And maybe as quickly as in next 2 years, we should be seeing at least 20 to 25% of the revenues being generated by various service providers in the market through their digital businesses only, and not the traditional contact center based services. So talking about all the positive aspects, obviously there exists some bit of current challenges and hurdles. A lot of clients are asking that what would be the impact. Firstly, what is the kind of restructuring required? What can be the negative impacts? What is the ROI? Do they need to replace their existing resources, and what are the compliance and regulatory issues that they need to navigate before implementing generative AI in their current solution? So that currently a lot of questions exist. Not all of them have been answered. Governments are taking a closer look at generative AI. A couple of European governments have also banned ChatGPT in their boundaries. But still these questions needs to be answered, and some of the challenges around miscommunication, hallucinations, what is the kind of data that is being used to train the generative AI model? Are these responses consistent? Is the model intelligent enough to transfer the conversation to an agent when it is not able to answer those questions, or is it still trying to generate one response after the other? And what is the current set of technologies which can be integrated with the generative AI? Solutions are some of the things or challenges that still needs to be navigated by a lot of enterprises and service providers. But at the same time, like we said, this technology has the ability to revolutionize the entire space, and it's important for enterprises to have that continuous journey of understanding what are the kind of generative AI solutions they need in their businesses, identifying the use cases which are right now maybe relatively easier to implement, analyze the cost required, investments required, and the benefits, and as well as the time frame that that will be required to generate that kind of ROI. Have that internal alignment with the leadership, and as well as the leadership buy-in. Have all their stakeholders in place, and at the same time, after they're ready internally, they know the use cases and the areas in which they want to invest, as well as have the budgets allocated. Maybe a lot of enterprises can partner with third-party providers or technology vendors who can come in, provide their expertise and support the generative AI adoption journey, which can be a standalone solutions as well as infusion with the existing digital solutions that enterprises have. And this is expected to change the way service providers are also engaging with their enterprise clients. So traditionally, service providers were primarily, like I said in the previous slide, were primarily generating revenues through traditional contact center voice, non-voice based agent services. But right now, generative AI has opened up new avenues for growth for most of these providers. So for example, training the generative AI data, supervising the generative AI journey, keeping the human in the loop wherever necessary, creating necessary bridges between different set of technologies, creating a layer maybe over the existing suite, which connects different set of technologies through APIs, and finally leveraging the data, ensuring the compliance, and using the data that an enterprise has, or the existing data that service provider has, to train the model and enhance the functioning of that model. So there are multiple avenues through which service providers can increase their set of services that they can provide to enterprises, and in turn grow their own business as well.
And something I've heard interestingly raised a few times in the last couple of weeks, Chandak, is that there's a lot of excitement about generative AI because actually a lot of maybe like the mid-sized or smaller providers feel that actually it levels the playing field. So on some of the other technologies, the larger players or those that have been around for a number of years have obviously had years of investment in those technologies and are maybe ahead of the game. Generative AI, everyone is starting at the same place, and so there's a lot of excitement from the smaller mid-sized players who are feeling that actually that gives us a chance to compete now, and we can invest as well. Yes, there's a cost element to this, and we know that the commercial models for generative AI need to be worked through, and over time they need to be sort of cemented in. But actually, it gives everyone a chance to compete on a level playing field, which is good news for a lot of providers.
Absolutely.
And it's good, and then generates good competition from a buyer perspective. So I always try and look things from both the provider and the buyer lens. And from a buyer perspective, competition means that people are looking to be innovative and also be competitive from a price perspective, which is good news for the market.
Totally agree with this. I think everyone is just starting up. It's important to see who has the correct intentions, as well as who knows the correct areas to be successfully implementing these generative AI solutions and take these offerings to their client base. And although the train has left the station for most of the providers, but still this is a starting phase for the market, and the successful ones will be the ones who will be investing in these solutions from the beginning. But having said that, I think we do have a poll coming up, and we would want to get your views on what do you expect the impact to be on your agent count in the next couple of years, if you're expecting generative AI to have some of your technology solutions becoming more intelligent through generative AI. So do you expect a significant reduction? you moderate one, maybe you plan it to do more gradual, or you don't expect any reduction at all. And finally, are you uncertain or still assessing the impact of generative AI in your existing business? So let us know what you think.
Yeah, I'd say I would encourage people. This is just to get a snapshot. I know that it is when Chandak showed that chart earlier, which looked at CXM being on the top right in terms of the opportunities for generative AI. We also know that you have to double click into that in terms of which vertical, and then double click into that in terms of the type of activities and whether it's a regulated industry, etc. So we know there's lots of variables in this, and it's going to be very contextual. But actually, we just want to sort of try and understand where are we seeing this moving, and I think that just from the poll as we're seeing it now, it looks like there's 24% of people are saying that there's expecting a significant reduction in their agent headcount. 16% have said moderate impact. 43% actually, interestingly, said there's a gradual decrease in agent count with a balanced approach. And I think that that's definitely where I would see, and actually based on the early examples that we're seeing of this being deployed, is actually it's a lot around agent assistance versus agent replacement. And I think that helping an agent be more efficient and effective and giving better answers, supporting customers better, will ultimately reduce costs because you can reduce AHT, you can improve first contact resolution, and all the things that can help control the cost. And then you can also look to move the customer journeys into a way that actually does reduce the need for the humans in the loop. So actually, it's really nice to see actually that people are expecting it to be a gradual decrease, because I think the apocalyptic view of there's going to be no need for call centers in the next year was never going to happen. Over 70% of revenues are still generated through voice contacts, and actually I think it will be used to gradually reduce. So that's an interesting output. So thank you for those that contributed. So I think if we move on now to what we would like to offer. So this is open to anybody, and please, there's in the chat there will be a link that you can request this. So we have done a lot of briefings on generative AI, and if you're interested in that, and it can, whether you're a service provider or an enterprise, we'd happily have a conversation with you for 30 minutes to talk about a bit more detail some of the topics that we've covered here. And also, this is evolving all the time and moving very fast. And so if you have interest in what we're seeing in the market or where we feel it's going or how it's being used, then please use the link in the chat to request one of these briefings, and then we'll look to set something up. So we're always happy to talk about this thing, and I'm sure that what you've seen today, 50% of it may be similar in a month's time, but 50% will probably be updated because things are constantly evolving. So if you are interested, then please use the messaging in the chat. So if I just move on, so we're starting to come towards the end of this now and looking at the future outlook. So what do we expect over the next 6 to 12 months? And it is really hard to predict, as we've said, but I think what we're seeing is that the prevailing economic concerns are negatively affecting customer sentiments and confidence, underscoring the importance of enterprises to persistently invest in and deliver exceptional CX. So I think that's the title that we put on this slide. But really, what if I was to sort of summarize that, I would say it's more important than ever that enterprises are focusing on their customers, delivering a great customer service, because as consumers get squeezed with spend, then they're going to choose to spend the money on those brands and companies that they feel give them great service, because as products become more commoditized, the service is going to differentiate them. So I think enterprises need to think about it from a CX perspective to, okay, what are the customers' changing needs during the uncertain times? It may be more confidence in the product. It may be a lower price. It can be lots of things, but really understanding your customer and actually understanding the reason they're contacting you. And that's where things like data and analytics comes in. And Chandak talked about digital CXM and the growth there, and analytics is an important part of that. But understanding the needs of your customers is going to be vital. I think that as an organization, enterprises need to maintain their profitability. So actually going to have to be thinking about, okay, where do you control your costs? We talk about customer retention. So again, that goes back to the fact that you have to be delivering great customer service to retain your customers. We all know that retention is much cheaper than acquisition. So actually being able to really focus on, okay, how do I retain my customers? And that comes down to not just having a retention line, which is what the way we did it 10, 15 years ago probably was, well, we'll put a retention line on to try and keep customers. But it's actually thinking about, well, why would a customer churn in the first place? Might be service, might be quality, might be product. But actually, how do you address those root cause issues? It's not just about having a retention line, but thinking about it through the whole value chain that a customer's going to be experiencing. And service providers have a big part to play in this as well, and they can help in terms of understanding, well, where are we, where are you intervening in that value proposition or that value chain, and how can you improve at all stages of that? Because we know that superior CX apps organizations avoid price wars. So you don't want to be a race to the bottom to offer the cheapest product. And again, people will look for lower prices. We know that, but actually they also value service, and it's no point buying like buy cheap, buy twice, as he used to say, I think. So but you don't want to be just buying cheap and then having really bad customer experience. People will still prioritize a great customer experience. And if you can be competitive on price, but not necessarily the cheapest, but offer great customer service, we know that customer service is a real important thing for people. So they're the things that we're expecting. We also know, if you look at it from a service provider perspective, organizations are looking to rebalance their portfolios of providers. So we saw during the pandemic, there was actually a push back towards more diversification of the amount of service providers that you use, because people were concerned about assurance of supply, making sure you had enough providers in the mix, depending on what was happening in the wider world. Now we're through the pandemic, thankfully, people are starting to think about, okay, how do we now look to reconsolidate? Because consolidation of service providers gives you less providers to manage, which I know sounds obvious, but that also helps you be more efficient and effective in your supplier management focus. But also because you can potentially increase the amount of business you have with a provider, you can look for greater book of business discounts, you get some synergies from management and overheads. And so actually what we've seen there on this chart will show that actually 34% of organizations were saying that they are going to look to consolidate or rationalize their service provider portfolio. And actually 36% are saying there's no changes to the provider mix, but will rebalance across providers. And rebalancing actually is quite a good lever for the buyers in the audience in terms of balancing where you're getting the best performance. So you don't necessarily have to be looking to pay more, but you could be looking or less, but you can be looking at where am I getting the best performance and using that as a lever to get focus from your service providers. So we know there's going to be some more consolidation coming in the market from a service provider perspective, but actually I think that's also the good service providers are going to win by being able to deliver great services, and they're going to be the ones who are getting that bigger share of the pie. When we think about it in terms of pricing, we're actually expecting the pricing to sort of be a little bit more calmer than it was previously. So you saw the chart earlier on. There's been quite significant price increases over the past. What we're actually see as expecting a subdued rate increase compared to previous years, because actually I think consumer spending and that's going to have an impact. So what we're expecting is that if we ended up in a real recession, and I think it obviously depends on where in the world you are, whether what a definition of a recession is and how it's impacting your country. But if we were in a real recession, we would expect to see that maybe the rates would be in the 1 to 2.5%. If we're in what we would call a mild recession, we may see that to be between the sort of the 1 and the 3%. So I think there is definitely a balancing out of those cost increases, because I think that everyone is having to tighten their belt. So service providers are having to pay more potentially, but also know they can't go to their customers and keep asking for greater increases, as enterprises are having to tighten their belts as well. And I think that we'll reach a middle point where we're identifying that we need to be a bit sensible on the rate increases. Things will level out, and then there will be a focus on how do you leverage technology to reduce the cost of your overall service of support. And that's one of the things that I'm really passionate about, is that you look at the total cost as well. It's not just the cost per FTE or cost per transaction or call, but really focus on what is the total cost, and actually bringing in technology can also help you to reduce your total cost. So I think that's also where we're expecting to see. So that brings us to the end of the session. We've only got a couple of minutes left. We did have, say, a lot of questions through the session that I've managed, I think, to answer through the actual Q&A portal. But I've actually seen one popped up. Oh, it was just a compliment. So thank you very much from Neil, saying it was a well presented session. So thank you. But no, we do obviously love to have interactions. So we've got all of our contact details. There was a few questions that we've got that are much deeper than we can answer in a 1 or 2 minute session. And I have offered that if people would like to have a follow-up conversation, then we're always happy to do that. But if you've got any questions that you would like to follow up with, then as I say, Chandak and my contact details are available to follow up on. So I'd like to thank everyone for their time today. Hopefully this has been useful. The slides will be shared afterwards or made available to people afterwards. And we are looking to do these sessions on a 3 or 6 monthly basis. And it will be great for you to continue coming along and seeing how we can continue to share these conversations. So thank you very much, everybody. It's been great to spend this time with you. And thank you, Chandak, for being such a great co-host.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, David.